Hello, friends. I'm Mrs. Hood, and welcome to Teachers of All Kinds. TAC is a podcast where teachers can benefit one another by sharing our unique experiences as individuals who also happen to be teachers. My guest for this episode of the podcast is Carla Rivera-Cruz. Carla is the founder and CEO of Epiphany, edpiphany.com, a company focused on professional development for educators. She is the host of the Epiphany podcast and is currently on a mission to open an after-hours teacher's lounge. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope you do too. By the way, you can find Teachers of All Kinds on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And now, on to episode 7.
I'm gonna get
Hi. Yeah, here we are. Hi, Carla. How are you?
Wonderful. How are you?
Good, thanks. So the day has arrived. We are here.
Yes.
And my mother, who lives in San Diego, because I grew up in San Diego, where you are right now, right? She just sent me an article that San Diego Unified School District and Los Angeles Unified School District are going online for the beginning of the school year at least. So that was interesting. Did you read that yet?
No, I haven't, and I guess I should know because my husband works in partnership with the K-12.
Oh, okay.
Here, but he hasn't mentioned it yet. So
yeah, they just announced it today.
Nah, good for them. I think that's the right call.
Yeah, definitely. I was seeing some graphs of cases in other countries where they've opened schools successfully, and it just pales in comparison to the U.S. graphs, both in our trajectory and our number of cases, of course.
Yeah, it is.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah. I don't know whether I want to be diplomatic or share what I really feel, but it's disappointing. It's disappointing because I think this is just one of those situations where, in my opinion, we're putting money over people.
Yeah.
And that is really problematic, as we can see from the data.
And threatening to decrease funding to schools, I mean, because they're not reopening, it's just,
Yeah, I actually saw a really good comment or tweet of some sort. Let me see if I can find it because I screenshotted it because I thought somebody had finally put words to, I think, what a lot of people are trying to say. And it goes as follows. This is Mr. Adam Kirk Edgerton. I don't know if it's Edgerton or Edgerton, but it's the word edge at the beginning. He said, "One of the most disturbing things to me about this current moment is that we have once again placed K-12 schools at the center to serve as our national scapegoat for our enormous failings in health, housing, childcare, and economic policy." And I was like, yes, person I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's tells it all. And another, you brought to mind a tweet or comment or meme I saw where someone said, "I wonder how social distancing in schools will look while we're doing school shooting drills." And that was really kind of head scratching as well, and just very, thought provoking.
Absolutely.
Because they're supposed to huddle in one corner, and the school shooting issue and the social distancing issue, and it's just like crazy times.
Yeah. And it just continues to be ways that we focus on symptoms of larger problems. And I think that I love how that person put it, is that we laser focus on schools and we use them as a scapegoat, and we criticize them for the ways that they're being reactive to things outside of school that inevitably are impacting school and bleeding into school. And they put the weight of the world literally on the shoulders of schools to somehow combat and fix all of those systematic problems. And don't get me wrong, I am a firm believer that education is the one thing that I think will help a lot of people escape from all kinds of systemic barriers. But I also wish that people would recognize that to task just educators with fixing wildly complicated social problems is not fair.
Right. I mean, you can definitely value the empowering factor of education, but to say that's the only or the most important or the first line of defense against these symptoms of systemic problems is silly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why not? I mean, they say, why don't we raise children to be better people, and then over a generation it'll get better? Well, why don't you just start everywhere?
Yeah. How about you worry about how you're being a better people? How about that?
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's a lot of people out there not being better people.
Right. So let's go back. How did you get into teaching? You said you started with Teach for America, or?
No, I actually, well, first of all, I pretended to be a teacher as a child pretty much all of the time.
Me too.
From a young age, I dreamed of bossing people around and telling them what to do. No, I kid. Teachers do way more than that, but I did always kind of have that little fantasy in my head of like, what might it be to lead a classroom? And so my first experience in a classroom was actually as a substitute teacher.
In Florida, right?
Yep. I was an undergrad at the University of Florida, and I needed a job. So I definitely was the student that worked 30 hours a week because my parents couldn't afford to have me living outside the house. So I went to college with the understanding that I had to pay rent. And so I transferred up to Gainesville as a Steak and Shake waitress. And I was a very good waitress, might I add. And then I stumbled upon subbing because my mom recommended it to me. My mom was a substitute teacher when she first moved to the United States. And selfishly, I wanted to do it because I knew for sure I would get weekends and holidays off. And it paid really well. It paid about the same that I was making as a waitress. So I signed up. And I was a sophomore in college. I went to college early, so I actually was 19 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I was subbing in a high school. And my first class that I subbed was seniors.
Wow.
I ended up, once I was a senior at UF, there were some students that they were literally in the first class that I ever subbed. Who were then students at the University of Florida.
Weird.
Yeah, it was a little awkward, but that was my start. Start.
Wow. And then what happened?
Then I started to like it, did an internship in between my sophomore and junior year with it's a nonprofit, and I think they're still out and about in the United States. I don't know if they have as many locations, but it was a summer internship for teaching kids called Breakthrough Collaborative. And then from there, I just, stumbled upon Teach for America, and I'm sure like campus flyers or promotions or marketing or whatever that might be. And I actually applied, got in and declined, went to grad school instead, worked for 3 years while doing grad school as a social worker. And then recognized again that like, man, there's a lot of work to be done just with the interactions I had with some of the kids on my caseload. And what a hard time they were having in school, and how teachers just weren't necessarily giving them all the things they needed, but also I wasn't giving the kids on my caseload everything I needed. I would see them maybe an hour for once a month, and like that doesn't feel like good impact. So then I remembered that Teach for America existed. I reapplied, I got accepted, and I just kept going.
Wow. So first you were aiming to be a social worker, not a teacher, in grad school and etc.
To be honest with you, no. I would say that there was never an aim. I kind of went where the wind took me.
Okay.
You know, I'm very happy with my career trajectory, and I'm very happy with kind of all of the things that I've done throughout the years, but I definitely was a little lost. You know, it's kind of, I was always a good student. I graduated 6th in my class, out of over 600 kids, and I got a full ride or a full scholarship for tuition for Florida, and then I, you know, had to work to pay rent and living expenses and things like that. But I wouldn't say that I ever had guidance. I never had anybody telling me, hey, these are the things I'm noticing that you're really good at, or I didn't even really know what kinds of professions were out there. So I changed my degree like 3 different times when I was an undergrad. I started with architecture, then I changed to math because I thought maybe I'm going to be a math teacher. I've always been good at math. I excelled at my math and science classes, and the teaching idea was always in the back of my head. But I wouldn't say that it was ever anything that was intentional. But I ended up graduating with an undergrad in psychology and family, youth, and community sciences as my minor. So I knew that serving, maybe that's also my little Catholic heart, where I knew that serving people was something that was important to me, and I didn't know how to. I didn't know what that was going to look like, but I was lucky enough that after undergrad and even during undergrad, I met people and I did things, whether it was an internship or subbing, that slowly I started to realize what felt good, what didn't feel good, and what felt meaningful. And being a social worker was so meaningful. I mean, you and I could probably go on and on about all of the ways that the K-12 system needs support. Social work system.
My mom and dad and stepmother all worked in social work and mental health, and that was my first major in undergraduate school, was psychology.
Look at that. So
helping people.
Yeah. Servant leadership.
Would you recommend the Teach for America program for new teachers?
I love that you asked that, because I also worked for TFA staff for a while, and we have an alumni survey with one question on it that has been one of the most controversial questions on this survey, and that is, would you recommend Teach for America to a friend or a family member? And you have people who are promoters of the organization who say no on this, and there is no opportunity to elaborate. It depends on the year. We have to take the survey every year as alumni, and it depends on the mood that you catch me in.
Okay.
If somebody that I knew were to say, I want to join an organization that's going to really challenge me, it's going to impact me like deeply, and I'm gonna come out the other end a better person than I was. Maybe it might not be the person that I had envisioned I would become, but I will come out different. And if someone said I want an experience like that, I would say absolutely, hands down, join Teach for America. The problem is that when I think about why I would ask somebody to join an organization like Teach for America, it would be, I would want to make sure that it wasn't for the benefit of that person who maybe already has had really wonderful things happening in their life, at the expense of the students that Teach for America is asking us to serve. So it's one of those situations where I sometimes put no, I wouldn't, but that's because I sometimes don't think that the people in my personal and professional lives really have what it takes and the mindset that is necessary to not go into schools that traditionally get the short end of the stick regularly and get somebody who might not be the best for kids, because their personal growth and development is not worth mass amounts of students getting a teacher that's not right for them.
Right. So you're thinking about how is it going to be the right fit for this teacher with these students in particular. And that's why sometimes it's a no. I could see that. And I think that's important to also think of the kids not just as this group of, schools that are disadvantaged and need any teacher they can get. That's not the case, right?
That's right. Because an empty classroom or a very full classroom with a rock star teacher is better than a bad teacher, in my opinion, or one that's going to cause harm.
Right, exactly. And then after Teach for America, you pivoted right into kind of, did you go right to work for the Teach for America staff or some other professional development organization?
No, I joined the Arizona Charter Schools Association as one of their quality schools trainers. They had a program called the Quality Schools Program that charter schools would hop on board with the association for a 3-year contract and say, we want to improve, we want to be data driven, and they would give us a portfolio of schools, and we would go out and support, do professional development, do coaching.
Oh, wow.
And then, but with that, I got to Phoenix, Arizona, and I, raised my hand and told TA, hey, I'm here. I just came from the DC region, and I started making professional contacts. And one day they called me and said, hey, we have an opening. We were picking through the list of alum in the area that we thought would be good. You're one of them. Would you apply? I said yes, and then I got on staff.
Oh, cool.
So to be wanted.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And did you move to Phoenix for your family, or did you move to Phoenix because of the job opportunity?
Yeah, that's both a job opportunity, and at the time I was with somebody in a long-term relationship that he and I were both from Orlando. And while I was teaching in DC, he actually got a job offer out in Phoenix, and so I hopped on over there. But I got a job offer before I moved, which was really helpful. But no, home is Florida. Family is in Florida and Puerto Rico, and anywhere else I go is just an adventure and where my things are.
How do you like San Diego weather compared to Phoenix and Florida?
Well, yesterday I went for a walk and it was hot and humid, so it felt very Florida. Really? Yeah. It was, I was like, oh my God, I'm sticky. What is going on? What is happening? But San Diego, I mean, you can't beat it. You can't beat it. It's some of the best.
So weather. Mild, and it's just beautiful. Yeah,
it really is.
Definitely. Of course, the fires are getting more often, and the big fires that happen every October. I remember being evacuated once when I was right out of high school. My family. So it's tough. And Phoenix too. My brother lives in Phoenix now, and he says there's a couple big fires as well. So it's kind of crazy.
Pick your poison. There's no shortage of natural disasters that could at some point kill you.
Right, exactly. That's true. I mean, everywhere has its challenges and its pros and cons, right?
Yep.
So.
Yep. I still vote for Florida because that natural disaster threat is a hurricane, and you have like a whole week to prepare. You at least get some warning. I don't know any other disasters that don't come on too quickly to prepare. So that's another vote for Florida in my book.
What about the crocodiles?
They don't bug. They're actually alligators. I don't think we have crocodiles.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, probably.
They don't bother. They're relatively slow.
Really?
Yeah, unless you catch them in water. In water, they're very slow.
That's true.
But on land, you're good.
So you had also said that at one point you ran for school board.
I did.
What city was that in, and what made you decide to run?
That's one of those things where somebody that I met professionally, his name is Carl Rivera-Cruz. He was working for Lee, an organization called Lee, still works for Lee now as I think senior vice president or something schmancy. And he met me and he just said, you would be really great. And I thanked him, and instead I ran his campaign and he won. And so I got my feet wet and I realized, hey, this is actually not that hard to run a campaign and to knock on doors and just talk to people. And it just so happens that 4 years after he won, I ended up moving into the same district that I had ran his campaign in, and his seat was up. He wasn't running for re-election. And so I put my name in the hat. And I think a little bit of it was name recognition. I knocked on so many doors for his campaign that I think people were like, I remember her. She knocked on my door 4 years ago. So that helped me out. But I also was one of the only candidates that leveraged social media to my advantage. So I won. I spent all of $20 on my campaign.
Nice.
And yeah, I served for a year, and then we moved out here to San Diego, so I had to give my seat up. But it was great.
So this was in Phoenix?
That was in Phoenix for the Creighton Elementary School District.
Wow. So for that school district, while you serve, you were supposed to serve for 4 years and you moved after a year. Is that what it was?
That's right. That's right.
So in 1 year, what do you think your biggest impact was?
I pissed people off. Can I say pissed off in this?
Yes, you can. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
This is a really great question, because success is really a matter of perspective. Mm-hmm. Because there are some people, if you were to go to Phoenix today and you were to survey some people who lived in the Creighton Elementary School District, or let's just say stakeholders of the Creighton Elementary School District. So that is my neighbors, that is teachers, administrators, students, parents, among others, but I would say those are the biggest stakeholders. Mm-hmm. There are people who, if you were to ask, was Carla's 1 year tenure a success, they would say, no, she was atrocious. She was the worst. She was just obnoxious. She had an ego. She had all these things. I mean, literally the meanest things that have probably ever been said about me were said there, which is hilarious to me, because local politics is like, I'm like, it's really not that serious, folks. Like, get over it. And then there are some people who watch from the outside and would say she crushed it. And she said things that were uncomfortable, that were difficult. This past month, there has been a lot of conversation on social media about racism in schools and implicit bias, and the ways that, to be quite honest with you, we have a teaching workforce that about 80% of them are white middle-class females. And so to at all pretend that we don't have issues or white savior complexes or all of these things would be naive. And it was written all over the walls in the district that I got voted to represent. And they really were unhappy with how quickly, I mean, out the gate, I was saying exactly that, because you don't have anything to lose. You just got elected. It's a 4-year term, unless
ease into it.
Unless they recall you, right? Like, there is no, I mean, that was my first real taste of, like, that's what we talk about when people say power. Like, that was positional power that I was granted by my neighbors, and there was nothing I could do short of, like, committing a crime that would probably get me recalled. So it was so nice, especially as a Latina, to finally be able to, like, say the things that I needed to say, that I wanted to say about the ways that my district and many districts were failing kids in mass quantities, and to not really have any repercussions other than people were offended, and they would reach out to me, ask to go to coffee, and tell me, I want to tell you how offended you made me. And to be quite honest with you, if you're a volunteer, I had one lady that was a mom that didn't even live in the district, wanted to put her kid in the district, wasn't my voter, wasn't my constituent. She took me to coffee to tell me how much I offended her. And I literally asked her, I go, what would you like from me today? And she's like, I just wanted you to know how much you offended me. I was like, great. So she took 30 minutes of my time that is valuable to tell me how offensive she found the things that I was saying. And what I told her is, like, your feelings don't matter as much to me as kids actually getting a quality education. Like, you're very low on that priority list, ma'am, because I just met you. I don't know you. Like, women like you have been underestimating me and treating me not very well for my whole life. So add you to the list of all the other people who've been doing that. Like, you are none of my concern. Your feelings are very, very low on that list. When I think we had, for 8th grade, we had I'm not going to say numbers because I don't want to misspeak, but we had an exorbitant amount of students that every single year, if you followed their data from kindergarten, first, second, third, that had been with us their entire educational careers, and they still couldn't read on grade level. So please explain to me why you continue to blame their poverty or blame that that they're transient, when I've got this whole list of kids that have been with you since they were kindergartners. You had them from the beginning, and they still can't read. That's what I'm really worried about. So why do I still have these PTA moms asking me to go to coffee, telling me how bad I hurt their feelings? Great. The whole world is affirming you. Go somewhere else. Post something on Instagram and get likes. Like,
entitlement.
I'm not here to stroke your ego. I'm here because I actually said this district has a majority of students that are Latino. There was not a single Latina on that school board. I was the first one, and you want me to worry about your feelings. So that's a long way of saying, if you were to ask me whether I was successful in a year, I would say absolutely, because I made people so angry and I made people start to pay attention. And it was attention that people, my neighbors, teachers, administrators, other people in the Phoenix metro area weren't paying attention. But what ended up happening is people started to whisper and say, like, the Creighton Elementary School Board meetings are a disaster. They are a dumpster fire. Everyone should see this. And so I brought so much attention in that one year that when I left and they announced that they were looking for people that were interested in taking my seat to be appointed, 11 people put their name in the hat.
Nice.
For a school district that not even 10 years ago had empty, like, vacancies that people, just one person would raise their hand and would just be put on that school board. So for me, success is we got people paying attention. We got people rowdy. And by we, I mean me. It was just me. I got people paying attention. I got people real rowdy. I got people angry at me. And I got a lot of people, other Latinos sitting on other school boards, that were saying, keep going. Don't even worry about all these feathers that you're ruffling. And at the end of the day, that's good for kids. When you've got 11 people who say, I'm interested in that position. I'm interested in that voluntary unpaid position because I either really like this lady or I really disagree with this lady, but either way I'm paying attention now and this matters to me. I did that in less than 365 days.
Nice.
So yeah, it was a success. I don't have any new friends for it, but I wasn't signing up to make friends. I wasn't signing up to get another notch on my resume. I was signing up because I knew that there were kids that were being failed in mass quantity, and I was tired of people not knowing that was happening.
Wow. What year was that?
Last year.
Oh, really?
I won in the 2016 election. Yeah.
Oh, no way.
Hold on. Wait, it's 2020? No, I'm sorry, the 2018 election.
Oh, okay.
Not Donald Trump year. A non-presidential year.
Okay. Wow. That sounds like just something that will go down in history. You know, you're the first Latina member of that school board. And it sounds like you got a ton of people involved and caring about kids, which is what we should all be doing. I always say when kids are failing, like getting Fs, it's because somewhere along the way we have failed them. You know?
Absolutely.
I mean, kids aren't born like predestined to fail math class or something. It's somehow we have failed them. An adult somewhere has failed them.
Or a chain of adults, right? Like
exactly. Usually
a system of adults.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And you know, of course, it's not a surprise why kids of color and people from lower income backgrounds struggle to achieve, right? Like it's absolutely true that with poverty comes trauma. And with not because, and let me be very clear, because I hate when people say you're poor, so you've been traumatized, like, or you're poor, you don't live in a household with love. It's like, stop that. That's a horrible generalization. But the actual poverty, actual insecurity, or maybe not living in the same house since you were a kid, or maybe there is a day that you go without food. Those events are traumatic, and they are events that happen more often to kids living in poverty than kids. So, you know, I get all of that. What is very problematic, and that I'm still asking somebody to explain to me, is that I get it. Sometimes kids come to school hungry. We feed them, right? We're Title I schools. We feed them. I get it that there is implicit bias that they are grappling with. I get that. But can someone please explain to me why it is that if years and years and years and years of all of this, that you can justify to me why it is that poverty makes it hard for a kid to do basic multiplication? Like, the leap is so big, and teachers have gotten really in the habit of making that huge leap of saying, well, they're not achieving, or they're not able to read on grade level, or they're not able to do more complicated math equations or basic algebra because they're poor. It's like that huge generalization and simplification of something that is so much more complicated is what was really aggravating me as a school board member, and aggravated me as a teacher, and continues to even aggravate me as someone who now has a child that I do want to put in a public school system, is that we can't have people oversimplifying a complex problem, and in doing that, we're still pointing outward, saying that something else is causing this, as opposed to waking up every morning and saying, what am I going to commit to that is within my control to be an excellent teacher for kids today? And, we got a lot of teachers complaining and not doing the work that they need to do in order to manage their own implicit biases. But they spend, 3 to 4 hours on Instagram getting that just right photo of their bulletin board, right? Invest your energy somewhere else. You do contribute to this problem in small ways, and you can contribute to fixing this problem in small and big ways.
And I think it's also, perpetuating that stereotype becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're creating the connection and the correlation. You're sustaining that correlation by thinking it yourself or identifying that it's the cause. And if we can empower ourselves and our students by breaking that connection and by saying, no, you have no excuse. Nobody has an excuse of, a disadvantage to not be able to do multiplication or to not be able to read. Everyone is able to. Everyone is able to learn. And I think some teachers will also blame, the previous teachers the kid has had for behavior, for academics. And it's like, if you don't teach them now, who will? So, that's that classic saying, if not you, then who? If not now, then when? So yeah, it's definitely.
We have to have a radical decision in this industry for people to take full responsibility for the children in front of them at any moment that a child is in front of them.
Not just their students.
That's right. Take full responsibility for a child in the hallway. You take full responsibility for a child in the playground, walking up to the school. Like, we're wasting so much time and energy putting the responsibility elsewhere or on something that happened in the past. And I don't see a world where that is productive, and it honestly is a waste of time. It's wasting valuable time. And like you said, it's perpetuating mindsets. It is this way that teachers literally take ownership away from themselves, and it's not ever going to solve the problem. And it is a piece of the solution, not all of the solution, because clearly we started this with that tweet, right? Of like, there are clearly all kinds of things that are bleeding into our school building, but we've got to stop pushing blame and pointing in other directions. We just got to get to work. Roll your sleeves up, get to work.
Definitely. I agree. And speaking of getting to work, I wanted to talk about the teacher co-working space you're trying to fundraise for and open in January 2022.
Yes.
In Phoenix?
In Phoenix, or in any city that would host me. If there's an investor out there that says, I've got $1 million, why don't you come to Omaha? Then it's in Omaha.
So tell us more about what you're doing.
Well, actually, that is a good segue, because it is this idea of exactly what I was saying, is if we've got to get to work. We've got to roll our sleeves up, and we've got to get to work. And I think that I fundamentally believe in the potential and in the wisdom of teachers as a collective body. And I do know that people don't wake up every morning and want to suck, right? No teacher says, hey, I want to wake up and I want to massively fail every student in my class. Nobody does, right? So we know that deep down that's not the intention of the people who are in this profession. But we also need to recognize that something needs to change. And I believe that the way that schools are structured right now, and I believe that the way that even professional development and professional learning communities are structured right now isn't going to cut it. And I know, based off of experience and based off of all the teachers I've surveyed and all the teachers in my life, is that a lot of our good work, a lot of our deep work, a lot of our thoughtful planning, and a lot of our own personal learning is happening on evenings and weekends. Mm-hmm. And it's happening over brunch with our teacher friends, right? Or it's 3 teachers who decide they're going to go to some yoga class after work, and then they decide to just go to dinner with one another, and then all of a sudden an hour has passed and they're still talking about work. Mm-hmm. But they're not getting necessarily credit for that, right? They're not getting PD for that, but that's where the magic is happening, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And so I want to create a space for that. I want a place that is open, because when you're either going to get that professional learning on your school campus, or your school's going to send you to a conference that is usually on a weekday, mm-hmm. At regular 8 to 5 hours, or they're going to send you to the Arizona K-12 Center that, again, is usually like professional development that you got to take time off of school or get a sub or whatever that is. And I just want to flip it. Like, I want to mm-hmm. provide a space and collaborative opportunities for teachers that is already happening, but definitely needs more resources and needs a formalized programming space for people to come. So I want to open an after hours teachers lounge that has all of the things that teachers are doing and need in the hours that they need it. And that's going to look like PD. That's going to look like content or grade level nights where we say, hey, do you teach in Maricopa County? Are you a 3rd grade teacher? We're all coming together on Wednesday night. Come and meet other people who are doing the work that you're doing. It includes saying, hey, are you a Maricopa teacher? Are you a voter in Maricopa? Guess what? There's an election coming. Here are all of the education candidates, and we're doing a meet and greet for members only. Come and meet them. Come and talk to them. Come and tell them what matters to you. Because all of these things are happening on Twitter and Instagram, and that's fine and dandy. But like, at the end of the day, your $3 worksheet on Teachers Pay Teachers is not going to make change, right? Like, we need very structured, purposeful events and activities for teachers outside of school in an age-appropriate space with adult seating, not a teeny tiny chair, and desks that you touch and there's gum underneath, which has happened to me. I've literally trained in a cafeteria where they're all sitting on those tiny little circle chairs for like 5th graders or 3rd graders in an elementary school. And I just want to create a space that honors and elevates adult learning, because adults do need that learning space and they do need that enriching space, and they're not going to get it when they're in a class and they're trying to learn something new and they look to the wall and they see a weather bear. Like, come on, people. Let's do something better for teachers.
And it sounds like really exciting how you're connecting teachers from other districts, and it could even be charter schools and private schools and public schools, and schools that have a 1-person math department. Give them the chance to connect with other math teachers in other districts and types of schools. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, there's so much room for affinity spaces. Also, to say 2% of the teaching workforce is Black male educators. Many times they're the only Black male educator at their school. So have a night for the Black male educator night, or a collective where you all can come together and talk about things that matter to you. I would even be willing to open it up to homeschooling parents. There's a lot of people who have homeschooling collectives. Come do a meet and greet. Come talk with our teachers in public education. At some point your kids are going to get a little too old and you're not going to be able to teach them physics and chemistry. So what are your options? There's just no shortage of ways that we can serve educators. And that word is very broad and should be defined very, very broadly. And I want a space where that can happen. And I'm going to be very honest with you. I love the K-12 system, and I've worked with some really good school leaders. I want to bypass them. I don't want the red tape of a school district. I don't want people to have to ask for approval. If a teacher, there are teachers that teach in schools whose leaders, let's say, are not ready for anti-racist professional development. They don't understand the value of it. They don't understand the importance. I don't want a teacher to ever have to wait for the professional development that they want. And so being able to have PD that may not be available to teachers at their school, but matters to them, whether that's a book study on the White Fragility book by Robin DiAngelo, whether we're doing a book study on the book Courageous Conversations About Race. There are ways that we can provide things for teachers that they're craving, that they're hungry for, that the only other way they could get it is to petition their school leaders or their district to cough up $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to bring a consultant in or to buy that book for everyone. It's tedious, it's expensive, it has red tape. You have very few people in positions of power who have the leverage to do those things. And if you create a space like the Teachers Lounge, you bypass all of that.
Right.
And teachers can go directly towards the resources, towards the events that matter to them.
And a community of people that care about PD, PD that they want and need right in the moment sounds like very conducive to making the world a better place and making educators feel welcome and feel at home, and in turn makes them better teachers, makes them better educators.
For sure.
That sounds amazing. I don't live in Phoenix, but I bet you're doing some kind of remote newsletter or something for it, or
alas,
eventually
the newsletter. Newsletters to me are like when people are like, do you journal? I have a therapist. I've actually had two recently. I had to do a switcheroo, and both of them, do you journal? You should journal. And I'm just like, that's just not what I do.
No.
I'm an out loud processor.
Sure.
Sit down and it's not my thing. And the newsletter has been the bane of my existence too, because so many people say like, you got to put out a newsletter. And it feels like journaling to me, where I'm like, I want to, I do, but it's hard for me because I always want things to be of value, but that's a long way of saying, if I do, I'll put you on the newsletter.
Thank you.
But I'd probably only commit right now to a quarterly one.
Sure.
Because it's worse than signing up for a newsletter and you get one email once a week or once every 3 days.
Too much. Unsubscribe.
Yeah. I would rather have no subscribers than a consistent unsubscriber.
But as you gear up for this, and with your current company, Epiphany, are you doing any kind of online things because of COVID that I or other people would be able to sign up for? I know you were doing the brunch, but I haven't gotten the email.
I'm going to email you. I swear you're on the calendar invitation, but I'm sending you the link after this.
Perfect.
So, yeah, there are two things that I do. One is not necessarily Epiphany related. One is just an EDUpreneurs mixer that I used to do quarterly in Phoenix. And now that I'm out of Phoenix, I'm also still missing my people. So I'm doing it virtually since I'm the organizer. I get to make those decisions.
Yeah.
And I've invited you, and I've invited some folks from Miami. But that's essentially to say, if you are in the K-12 space and you are a sole proprietor of some kind, or own a micro business where you maybe have 3 or 4 employees, and you just want a group of people who understand that and are in that, and you want a support group, join that. The second thing for Epiphany is, yes, I am piloting our services. There are events that I know for sure that I want to do. There are trainings that I want to offer regularly. And there are these events called the Critical Friends Protocol that I want to offer as nights where it's like a problem solving night.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, but I want to pilot it first. I want a board of teachers that can participate virtually because of COVID, of course. They can also give us feedback to say like, yes, if I participated in this once, I know for sure that as a member, I would want to come over and over and over again to help solve problems with my colleagues. Or yes, this was a worthwhile training and I would want more trainings about this because, we're thinking about charging people maybe like between $19 and $39 for different tiers of memberships.
Okay.
And we don't ever want somebody to say it's not worth it for me to have this monthly membership, because I'm actually not going to take advantage of the things that you have to offer because it's not that good, right? I'd rather test it out. So we're looking for teachers who are interested. Or we're looking for rich people who are willing to sponsor the teacher's membership in the cohort. It's $249, which is a lot to a teacher, but it's pretty nominal to business leaders, right? And so if there's anyone out there that's like, I do love teachers, I want to do something nice for teachers, we would love anybody who would be willing to sponsor a teacher so that I can give that spot in the cohort pilot group away for free.
When is the deadline for that?
I think it's going to be rolling at this point, because at first I had it be July, and then I realized that's pretty tone deaf, given that a lot of people still don't know what on earth the school year is going to look like. So I pushed it to late August as a start date. It'll probably start in September, if I'm honest with myself, and I'm honest with the fact that teachers don't even know if they can commit to a once every 2 to 3 week virtual meetup, because they don't know what school's going to look like.
Right, exactly. I guess, school districts, like we talked about at the beginning of this episode, they're just starting to announce their plans for fall. I think more and more school districts will start announcing they'll follow San Diego and LA, at least in California and around the Southwest, and say they're going online, but we'll see, I guess.
We shall see.
Yeah.
Time will tell.
I know you had to maybe, did you have another commitment coming up here that you have to go soon, or are you good?
Yeah, I have about 30 minutes after this to have lunch.
Me too. I have a few more questions I wanted to ask you, if that's all right.
Yeah, I can rapid fire. I can rapid fire some answers for you. Go for it.
Let's see. How do you recommend teachers build relationships with students and families? Kind of a generic question there.
You have to actually. Oh,
sorry. Go ahead.
The only way to build true, authentic relationships with anybody is to authentically care about them. There is no algorithm. There's no checklist. You can't do something empty-heartedly and expect that result. You have to actually care.
That's an interesting answer, because a lot of teachers would say there's no way to change that. If they don't care, how do they start caring? Or but then they should just get out of teaching, really, right? So they just need to show that they care. Well, let's see, what else do I want to ask you before I get to the wrap-up questions? Oh, you're a new parent. You have an 8-month-old?
I do.
How has personally juggling COVID and parenting and Epiphany been these last few months? Has it allowed more time together with your family as a silver lining, or?
Well, I've been working from home now for 3 years, so there hasn't been a lot of adjustment. What I will say is that my child has not changed my aspirations for myself, nor has he changed my ambition. He's just helped me really crystallize even more what I do want and what I don't want. And I'm much more intentional with my time, and I'm much more intentional when I say no, I can't.
Okay. Yeah, I remember we were talking about public education. You're planning to put your son into a public school, and I can see how that would, continue inspiring and clarifying your calling to make public school a legitimate place to learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a safe place to learn.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll get to the wrap-up questions so we can both have lunch here. The first one is, what is a skill or quality that you have that you are most proud of?
I'll actually lean on the Strengthfinder, the Clifton Strengthfinder. One of my top 5 is actually a rare strength, and it is activator. I don't waste a lot of time. thinking or planning. Like, I'm a doer. So, you know, like, death by meeting is a real thing. Like, don't put me in any meeting that's over 45 minutes without me zoning out, because I'm like, what are we doing? I don't want to talk anymore. What are we doing?
Is that the one with the buckets? The Strengthfinder?
The Strengthfinder has 4 like umbrellas, and then underneath those strengths, and then you get 5 that are
okay. It sounds kind of like something Ashley Scott was talking about when I talked to him in episode 4.
I watched it. Great interview. Great interview.
Thank you. And what is one skill or quality you're planning to work on this year?
Oh, I have so many. I am my own worst critic, actually. So I beat myself up plenty. So actually, one skill I'm working on is actually my default thoughts. My default thoughts tend to be negatively oriented. And that also is a waste of energy. In the spirit of what I talked about with teachers, is that I'm trying really hard to stick to the affirmative. And that can be something as simple as saying, I have to do laundry, right? Like, the word have to is so detrimental, when really it could be just, I'm doing laundry. Or I get to do my laundry right now. You know, like, that's a silly example, but well,
it gives you more power not to use have to. If you say, I'm choosing to do my laundry right now, maybe it's more empowering too.
Yeah, something along those lines. And then also just catching myself when I have those negative thoughts even about myself, and saying like, no, like, that's not true, right? Like, yesterday my friend left her phone in my car, and she, I guess, sent me a text from her iPad, and I got to her house to let her know I was there, and I called her on her phone that was in my car. And, you know, like, I said to myself, like, Carla, you're so stupid. And I know that that was like in passing and not truly like meant, but the more that you have comments and thoughts like that about yourselves and about other people, that is toxic. That seeps into your subconscious in a way that I don't want to continue to do. So my big goal is to shift that habit, and as much as possible try to stay in the affirmative in the things that I say and in the things that I think.
That's powerful. What else do you do for your self-care routine for staying inspired as an educator and a supporter of educators?
I get away from my phone. I embrace boredom, because great ideas come when you're bored. And I do not exercise with my child. That foolishness of buying a stroller, a running stroller, or doing mommy and me exercise classes is some BS. Exercise is my time, and I do it alone, and it is fantastic.
That's awesome. That's funny. My sister just bought her son a little Jeep, like a Jeep stroller, but then she also bought him like a remote control, huge, like actual car he can drive when he gets older. It's like a little like Jeep. They're crazy. Shout out to Audrey Kachera. So where can people find out more about you or connect with you?
In terms of me personally, not a lot. I'm a hermit on social media. I'm sure you've noticed. The only thing on social media about me is Epiphany. So at EpiphanyAZ on Facebook, or at Epiphany on Twitter and Instagram. And if you message it, you're going to get me. So that's the way to get in touch with me.
Perfect. Well, Carla, thank you so much for taking time to be with me today. It was wonderful chatting with you.
Thank you for listening, for giving me this platform, and for elevating my voice and my idea. I appreciate it.
Have a wonderful day.
I'll email you right now, and I'll see you.
Okay, great. Bye. Your time is valuable. Thank you for spending some of it listening to teachers of all kinds. I'm Mrs. Hood, and I'll see you next time on TAC.